session some housekeeping points. Our guest, Farshida, will be giving a short 10 to 15-minute talk, after which we will open up for questions. If you have a question for our guest, please post it in the chat and we'll try our best to get it answered. Also, all of our GEMH sessions and the chat window are recorded and will be available on YouTube afterwards. We're very excited to be doing these GEMH sessions, but we value your input the most. Please let us know what you think of this GEMH session by filling out a short 3-minute survey. We'll post a link in the chat window now, as well as at the end of the session, so you can fill it in whenever you want.
Yeah, exactly. So today's guest is Farshida Zafar out of Erasmus University Rotterdam, here in the Netherlands. Farshida is a senior fellow at ErasmusX, which is Erasmus University's innovation platform. She also has a track record in the field of educational innovation, and in the past few years, she has co-designed, developed, and implemented numerous educational programs, as well as new mobile applications. She's currently leading the ErasmusX initiative at Erasmus University, and Farshida's ambition is to future-proof education.
Yeah, small correction. I just saw a senior fellow at the Jean Monnet Center of Excellence for Digital Governance and the director of ErasmusX.
Yes.
To be correct.
Yes.
So today in this GEMH session, Farshida will talk to us about the important role technologies play in many aspects of our life, including the ways in which we learn and teach, and about ways in which we can make sure that these tech innovations make a lasting impact. Welcome, Farshida, and we are most excited to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hanneke and Nastasia, and thank you for allowing me to share my experience, and thank you for viewers at home or at the office, or maybe you're on a terrace, for your attention and for your questions. I just wanted to get this out of the way before I forget to thank you, so let's get started. Well, I think all of us know that technology has changed our lives. From the way we do our grocery shopping, to the way we find a potential life partner, to the way we transfer knowledge and educate the next generation. And let's own up to it, people. Technology has changed the educational game. There's no way back. So if we can't beat the techies, let's join them, right? So let me start with a little anecdote from 1997 by Peter Drucker. This famous management guru, the godfather of management, predicted that online and distance learning would disrupt universities and change the way we educate future generations for good. And when the MOOCs arrived somewhere in 2011, the same claim was made. Universities were often mentioned as ground zero for disruption. The new kids on the block were going to take over in an unprecedented pace. 10 years later, we can agree that MOOCs have made a certain impact, but the promise of disruption, the big shift or transformation, has not been delivered. And to a certain degree, the commodification of technology-enhanced education within higher education landscape has occurred to us by some leaps and bounds. Some tools have made a huge impact on our daily lives. Just think of your email or PowerPoint, or even the Zoom platforms we work on nowadays. But most new technologies, emerging technologies, is received with a healthy dose of skepticism. And regardless of the adoption rate or the skepticism, the number of tools and platforms available should not be confused with the quality of education on offer. Still, we keep on developing new tools and applications. And as innovators, we sometimes get lost in our quest for educational innovation, right? So intrigued by emerging technologies, driven by our curious nature and unbound passion to make things better, more fun, more challenging, we often see a problem that could be fixed with technology. And in our enthusiasm, we design and develop the most brilliant tools, deploy these within our schools, and hope for the best, fingers crossed. But more often than we would like, the tools end up not being used, or the budget is cut before it can be used, and sometimes even the project is killed before it's even built. So the outcome is often the same. Innovators, we feel disappointed, frustrated, and maybe sometimes even start doubting our own competences or purpose. So just a little thought experiment. Imagine you're a lecturer at a university, and you want to build a mobile application that captures real-time data of your students' knowledge. You have a general idea and know what the end result needs to be, or know what it looks like. But where do you go from there? So if you have a budget, you look for an app developer and have it built. And after the build, it's all good to go, right? No, wrong. You have just become a stressed out parent of your new mobile application baby. And once your application is built and developed, that's when your project actually starts. You found out that the app needs to be hosted on a safe and secure server. You get questions from your CIO, your central information officer, who wants to know if and how the application impacts the IT architecture of the university. The privacy officer wants to know if your app is GDPR compliant. The app developer wants you to sign a service level agreement, an agreement where you actually discuss whether and who and what to do when bugs are reported. Your students, they come to you reporting bug after bug after bug. It's not working. My mobile phone isn't running, etc., etc. And most stressing, your manager, he or she wants to see results because this hobby of yours is taking up your time and energy that you should be spending on teaching and research. Oh, and did I mention your budget is burnt and you have no additional funding for your app? You're just a lecturer and have spent all your spare time in between teaching and research on getting this app up and running. You don't have time for this. No one has time for this. So why does this happen? And how can we do better? Is there a way to prevent a situation as such? Well, if you look at educational innovation, especially when you look at educational technology, this all exists along a continuum. From incremental innovations to radical innovation, every type of innovation requires a different approach, has a different process. And depending on the type of innovation, waterfall or radical, you name it, you want to check a few things before you start. And you should start with the first question and ask yourself, what problem are you trying to solve and why? The first thing you want to do before even thinking about a new tool or developing or designing it or introducing it, because you found something great on the market, is empathize with your end users. In this case, your target audience, your students. Get out there and test your assumptions. You want to do the same with your colleagues. Talk and discover if the problem you're seeing is something that resonates with your colleagues as well. And if you're willing to go the extra mile, collect some data, qualitative and quantitative. And the outcomes of these talks, of these interviews, of your data, these outcomes will help you define the target audience and your insights. And in some cases, you might even find that technology might not be the solution. And this too is an outcome. So the next step you would want to take is to think about feasibility. Have you conducted a feasibility study? I can already hear you thinking, oh my goodness, I still have to do all of this next to figuring out how to design an app. Yes, you should be doing this. And this is why. When it comes to feasibility, we forget a couple of things. When you think of feasibility study, this study is usually used to determine the viability of an idea, such as ensuring a project is legally and technically feasible, as well as economically justifiable. It tells you whether a project is worth the investment, and in some cases, a project might not even be doable. This study also allows you to engage with different departments, people you need for a successful outcome. In your search, don't forget the support departments who are impacted by your project one way or the other, and proactively engaging with these departments, for example, your CIO office, your central information office, who has valuable knowledge on the IT architecture, ensures a seamless connection. IT professionals who know and understand what needs to be done when new tools are introduced are people you want in your corner. And let's not forget about the privacy officers who can tell you how to make your application, your app, your new tool GDPR compliant, or at least give you some details of what to look for. And, these professionals might even be willing to chip in kind by sharing their knowledge or devoting some time towards your projects, or even in terms of funding, because they might see the importance of your project that your manager does not see. So you want these stakeholders at your discussion table, at your design table, and tell you what your options are. And to ensure a positive outcome, you want to engage with them early on into your projects. So next to that, have you thought about the durability or the sustainability of your project? You know, this is something to keep in mind, because you don't want to introduce a new tool that is not going to be used in the next coming years. Because what happens a lot of time is that developing and deploying a new tool, or even getting a new license for a new tool, we forget that that's just the start of your journey. It's just the first phase. The second phase is using the tool and keeping it alive. Now, hosting a new tool is not cheap. Server capacity is not cheap. Security testing is not cheap. Licenses are not cheap for that matter. So before you start your project, be realistic about how much money you would need to keep your tool alive. And in terms of people, you can't do everything by yourself, but hiring might not be a possibility. This is why you need to build alliances with other departments and be open to create a win-win situation for everyone involved. And also think about your end game. What happens at the end of your project? Who will take the responsibility over the new tool? Now, the third thing you want to keep in mind is having support from leadership. And this is of equal importance. Why? Because at the end of the day, your manager, your boss, the governing bodies of your faculty or school or university have the responsibility to maintain a healthy financial, technical, and legal household for the entire school or faculty or university. And money spent on your project is money that cannot be spent on other necessities. And to ensure you obtain a healthy budget for your project, it's crucial to involve the decision makers in your project. And creating an overall budget sheet and a process without creating gateways for these stakeholders can and will backfire over time. So offer decision makers an opportunity to be involved or to get involved. And transparency, people, is key in this process. Now, one more important thing is to be aware of the context you're working in. Understanding the context of your environment will allow you to move before you're ready. And with this, I mean in-depth understanding of the organizational culture, patterns, and behaviors of the people and departments involved. Identifying certain behaviors and patterns can be quite confrontational and sometimes even create tensions. But by being aware of this, allows you to ease people into your project and process and manage expectations better. It also helps in terms of who to talk to, how to talk to them, what to talk to them about, and when to engage with them. The other side of the story is that it's hard to find the right people within the organization to talk to. The search requires some patience. It takes time to get everyone on board, to get everyone's input, and to manage expectations. And the lack of having a communal language might even lead to misinterpretation of what you want and what other parties think you want. Every discipline has its specific jargon, and more often than not, things get lost in translation. In short, stakeholder mapping and understanding how to relate to these stakeholders, how to relate them to your project, investing time to understand these stakeholders is definitely worth your time. You know, I can talk for hours on these topics, but just to give you an idea, in a few sentences, you know, if you want to crack the code of future-proofing education, of, you know, introducing technology-enhanced education, incremental developments don't get you there. If you really, really, really want to pursue this and really want to change it, you can't continue to only improve upon systems that already exist. You have to challenge them deeply through radical thinking and testing seemingly outrageous solutions, even if that means that people have a hard time grasping what you do. But like Jeff Bezos put it, if you truly want to innovate, you must be willing to be misunderstood for a long period of time. And to put emphasis on one more thing, teamwork makes the dream work. Create your own team. Don't do this by yourself. but engage with people who know how to use technology, who know how to design your education around it, and who know how to keep your mobile application baby alive and see it grow. So thank you for your attention. I am impatiently awaiting your critical questions now.
Thank you very much, Farshida. That was very inspiring, and I have learned a lot already. And I also think that in GEMLab, we have a few babies that could have used you as a non-stressed out parent, I think. So lots of stuff that we could have thought about before we started developing a lot of the apps and games that we have built. So we open up the floor for discussion and questions now. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will ask them to Farshida. But to kick off, I have, of course, also a few questions of my own. So you described the work of ErasmusX as radical innovation, and I love that word. But it's also quite a term, right? Radical. It's quite provocative. So I was wondering why you choose this specific type of innovation and this word specifically as well.
Wow, Hanneke, what a brilliant question. The way I look at it, there's a lot of innovation happening in higher education. And a lot of the innovations that we do, and this is not to diminish anyone's work or to say, or to be negative or, about the innovations that are taking place. But a lot of the innovations I see around me are more incremental innovations. And as I explained, innovation exists along a continuum. And if you make the analogy between innovations as such and place them, for example, around the SMAR model for educational innovation, you can see that incremental innovations are more substitutions for things that we already do. So for example, you have a paper reader, but now your reader is digital. So that's the substitution level, the incremental level of innovation, right? Then if you go to more mature ones, you can get into the field of modification of your education. So that would mean you're building upon something you already did. So you have your digital reader, but now you have a nice digital quiz next to it. So you modified something, right? So it's not the same anymore. Then if you go to even more mature innovations, you go into the realm of augmentation of education, which means to me, it's still not, you're still true to the core of your course and what you were trying to do, but it's different now. So for example, you have taken your course content and you've augmented it and it's become something new. And then if you take a look at what we're doing, the radical innovations in the SMAR module, it's about redefining education. It's about making your courses so differently that, tasks and educational tasks and assignments that weren't possible before are possible now. So for example, in my background, you can see the Minecraft environment that we built for our university. Now, although this started out as a gimmick, we're actually designing educational tasks within this platform. And we're not doing this for, something in the beta field. So it's not a mathematics course because those courses already exist in Minecraft. We're doing a course within the realm of law in Minecraft. And we're creating assignments and tasks within this realm that were previously unconceivable. So that's why I like the term radical, because it gives you that freedom, that liberty to actually experiment with things that people deemed impossible. I also like the term radical because it triggers some type of controversy around it. People feel uneasy. They feel triggered by it, like, oh, I don't want anything to do with them. And that's fine too. But you have to trigger a certain emotion. And, and I think by making it sound radical, people might be scared, but then it's our job to keep them engaged. So I hope that kind of explains your question or is the right answer to your question.
Yeah, it really does. It is also really nice to know the difference between incremental innovation and more radical innovation. And I totally agree with you that term does something or evokes something within people, it also does in me. So that's also why I had this question. Nastasia, is there room for another question, or do you want to take over?
No, so just to latch onto that, basically, because there's clearly a drive to, shock people. You want to keep them engaged, right? You want to trigger, like you say, you want to trigger an emotion. But on the same side, you mentioned that you really have to try and build up good connections and alliances with people. And this is actually also what one of the questions in the chat is about, a question we got from Abela Michela, which reads, how do we get to actually know the inside outs of all those departments, especially now that meeting by the coffee machine isn't an option anymore? So do you have any thoughts on how to build those alliances in the absence of physical contact nowadays?
Yeah, that's a really hard one. And it's really difficult for anyone right now, right? To build those alliances, build those connections. But at the same time, I also think sometimes we limit ourselves in our own creativity, in our own guts and glory moment by just reaching out. If you want to maintain a certain connection with people, the easiest way to maintain that connection is by not always talk shop. It shouldn't always be about work. You don't do that at work either when you're at the coffee station. You talk about, did you see that show last night on TV? What'd you think about that? We don't do that anymore because we formalize all our meetings, which is also, if you ask me, the reason why my calendar is booked meeting after meeting after meeting, is that we don't allow ourselves to actually say, you know what, let's not do this. Let's just hang out for 15 minutes and just see how you're doing, right? But there's also technological solutions for this. So for example, within my team, we like to experiment with new platforms, with game mechanics, we have a crazy creative team of young people who, trust me, they know more about technology than I do, and I'm the technologist in our team. Can you believe that? But the funny thing is, one of our team members came up with GatherTown and said, hey, I've seen this new platform. It looks a little bit like Pokemon, looks a little bit like Habba Hotel. Shall we try to see if this works for our team? We tried it out and figured out that this new platform actually allows us to engage and have that coffee moment, because everyone's on the platform. You can just walk up to each other and say, hey, how you doing? And after we tried it out with our team, what we did is we just looked up, who do we know in our network who could benefit from this? So we reached out to other learning innovation teams within our university and asked them, hey, do you want to come over and visit us in our new office? Just the fact that we said, why don't you come meet us in our office, was already like, what, you guys have an office? How did this happen? So it's also by opening up your doors to others and engage with you. And I've had several team members that joined us during Corona, during the lockdown. I think the last 2 core team members that joined us were only on campus for a couple of weeks before we had the lockdown. But I've been walking around university for 8 years now. So for me, it was my task to put them in the networks, to get them connected to people that I know that could help them out with certain things. And I think that's the important thing, is that if you don't know, ask someone who does. There's probably someone in your university who does know. And if that person knows something, ask for a referral to refer you to someone else who knows the other part of the puzzle. It's also about building that network and building that connection, that sustainable connection. I mean, the first time I started at EUR, I think the program I was designing back then was the first program that went completely blended. I just started in Rotterdam in 2012 in February, and the program had to be launched in September of the same year. And I needed to figure out, how do I get people from the AV media department? Where do I find the IT people? How does this even work? Not being a part of faculty for that long back then. But then when I spoke to the people from the AV Media Support Center, they actually told me, well, you should also talk to this person and you should talk to that person. And I went and I spoke to them, and then I asked them, who else do I need to talk to? And then within no time, you have this entire map of all stakeholders you need to engage with. So also asking others, like, I have this issue, who else do I need to talk to? And it's so basic. It's not, even if when I speak, I'm like, that's like such an open door. But maybe sometimes you just need to hear someone else say, you know, it's an open door, just walk in, to actually do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also agree with Abela that it's really hard in these Corona times, but we used GatherTown when we prepared for this GEMH session, and it was really fun to be in that game-like environment and talk to each other.
Yeah, it was
so
wonderful.
Yes, there are technological solutions for it. Yeah, to also move back, I think, to the final part of your presentation, where you talked about team and that the team is so important and you need to do it together. I was wondering what you think are the most important ingredients for a successful team. So in your opinion, what do you need, or what type of people, how do you work together? What is important there?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I wish I had my my right hand here, Alexander Whitcomb, who's like, you know, super knowledgeable on this topic. So I have a very holistic way of how you build a team, or a holistic view on how to build a team. And I strongly believe in a transformational leadership. You know, you're working with each other, which means that you spend most of your time together. You know, it almost becomes family. I mean, I spend more time online with my team than I do with my family at home, even when I'm working from home. How crazy is that, right? But how do you get that team together, right? Well, multidisciplinarity is key. One of the things that I vouch for is you should not have people that are exactly like you in your team. You should have people who are the opposite of you in your team, because, you know, having a multidisciplinary perspective on the things that you're doing actually allows for different solutions as well. So multidisciplinarity is key. The next thing, which is key to me, is diversity. You know, and I don't mean just diversity by nationality, because that's way too simple. I don't mean diversity by gender, because that's way too simple too. I'm talking about diversity in socioeconomic backgrounds, educational backgrounds, you know, the other types of diverse people. So if you look at my team, we have designers in my team, we have educational psychologists in my team, we have people from the business school in my team, we have me in my team, which is, I'm a lawyer and a technologist, you know, so it's a very diverse team, but we also have a very diverse background. You know, we didn't study at the same faculty, we didn't study at the same university, we didn't even grow up in the same towns or the same countries or whatever. But all these perspectives actually allow you to look at a problem from a different angle. So multidisciplinarity, diversity. And then the third thing is have a culture where you allow for mistakes, where you allow growth, where you allow open and honest discussions. And this is hard, you know, because building a culture is elusive. What is culture? But when you get a team, it's important to take the time and to invest in that type of culture. So we had multiple sessions on how do we deal with failure? What is our perspective on failure, you know, within our team? And we have people who think, well, failure, no, you can prevent those, you know, you can see it coming, right? And we have people who are like, yeah, but, you know, if I make a slight mistake and I fail, then my life is over. You know, we have those type of people in our team. So what we try to do is to be open about it, share our failures, but also share our successes. Also be open about your own person, your vulnerability. I have multiple sessions with my team where I explain to them, I'm not having a good day today. So you know what? I'm just going to go right today. Please don't bother me because I'm not having a good day. But just being open and vulnerable, that also allows you to have that openness, to have that culture where you're allowed to be you and not just a job title. And what's another thing that we did is we have multiple reflections. which is something we don't do often in university. You know, we have created a reflection line where we reflect every month with the entire team. How did this project go? How are you doing as a person? Is there something that you're stuck with? Do you need help from someone? You know, do you want to have a chat? But also, if you're doing extremely happy, you're good, share your secret with the rest of us. You know, so reflecting and doing that very consciously helps you also to grow as a team. And a great way to do that is also just to have a big reflection at the end of the year, because everyone knows, at least within my university, the last weeks of December, there's not major things happening. There's not a lot of things happening, not a lot of projects going on. Take that time, you know, to sit down with your entire team and to reflect. How did we do this year? What went well? What went bad? How can we improve? You know, what are the highlights of the year? And then take lessons from that so you can actually do, you know, a major shift the next year. So for me, that type of working, you know, working together, learning together, reflecting on what we've learned is very important. And it also helps you to actually take, you know, a moment to see what you've achieved, because we don't do that, you know. So I think when it comes down to team, that's my tip on a team: multidisciplinarity, diversity, foster an innovative culture, and reflect.
Yeah, I think that's so wonderful, because you just spoke a lot about putting in the time basically to cultivate your team, cultivate that culture. And I think you're totally right that people make it work in the end. It doesn't happen out of thin air. You need the right people, and you need to keep the right people. Which brings me to a question that we had in the chat from Jonneke Weertmeester. She asks that funding often seems available for starting projects or launching, but finding funding for the phase after launch, the distribution and implementation and the maintenance, seems a big barrier. Do you have any ideas on how to tackle this barrier for the phase after launch?
Yeah, just put it in your project proposal. Because this is one thing that we often forget, is because in our enthusiasm, we're just like, oh my goodness, I want this to be developed. It needs to be developed. And, you know, so we draft a beautiful project proposal, and then we only think about the cost right now. Well, we don't think about, okay, but once it's there, what then? You know, so, and I learned this the hard way. I learned this the hard way by introducing a new application. I think it was 2014, and I had a teeny tiny little chunk of money to build an application. Now, all coders know that if you want to build a solid, good mobile application, 25K is peanuts. That's 2 weeks of programming and you're done. And then you don't even have your UX design, you don't have your UI design, you just have the damn app, and that's it, right? So it looks ugly, it's probably not functional, it's buggy, but you have something. I didn't think of what else do I need to put in my project sheet, in my costs. What else? Because I didn't think of, okay, but then the app is implemented, and then what? But you have to think about these things, and you probably don't even know this. You're probably not even aware, but this is why you need to talk to your CIO officer and to your IT people and to, you know, people that actually maintain these applications and make sure that your licenses are all okay. You know, so, and they can tell you, well, to keep your app alive, we need 6,000 euros per year for hosting and for a service level agreement. That you write that down in your project proposal. Per year, I need an additional, you know, structural funding about this much. And by actually putting that down in your project proposal, 2 things can happen. One, your manager might tear up your project proposal and say, you're crazy because this is way too much money. Or 2, you can actually cut a deal with other departments, and collectively you can come up with the money that you need. Now, that's just funding from your university. If you're looking for large sums of money, also try to figure out if there's grants. You know, there's a lot of grants we don't look into because we focus too much on our own discipline, too much on our own university, and too much on our own spectrum of work that we do. But if you look, you know, or if you find someone who's doing your European grant officer, for example, have a discussion on what you're trying to build and see if you can collectively or together with that person find a grant that would actually sustain your app for a longer period of time. Try to find alliances that are willing to contribute to the app. So, you know, and when it comes down to the funding, this is like, you know, the biggest problem we have at universities. We want to create our own tools, we want to develop our own tools, but we don't necessarily think about the longevity or the sustainability of the tools. And by actually making that a part of your project proposal, you're already aware that you need more money than you initially thought you needed.
Yeah,
so I hope
totally
that
agree.
answers the question.
Sustainability is key, I think, and also key to being successful, yes or no.
Yeah.
I had another question. You recently published a blog on Medium, I saw, I think May 20th, also on ErasmusX. And in that blog, we can share it afterwards so other people can read it as well. You describe the gap between knowledge and skills that are taught at this moment or in the last few years to students, and the type of skills people need when they enter their working environment. How do you think that radical innovation or even ErasmusX can change that, or can try to, how are you targeting that? Yeah,
that's another brilliant question, because this is also a question that we're dealing with right now, right? So the one thing I dislike about discussions on skills is that whenever skills come up, we always talk about 21st century skills. And for me, that feels kind of weird because we're in 2021. Aren't we 21 years too late with that discussion? Shouldn't we have had this discussion years ago? And then when we do talk about these discussions, usually we come up with lists. Okay, we want our students to be digitally literate, or we want to enhance critical thinking, or we want them to be more collaborative or creative or whatever. What we usually forget then is that the type of education that we're offering might not always sustain, you know, acquiring these skills. Also, there's student associations that do events and stuff like that to, you know, for students to obtain these skills. All is great, but what we forget is it's not easy to learn a new skill. You know, if I ask you tomorrow, can you critically assess this paper, and you've never done that before, then the first thing you're going to do is freak out. So, you know, when it comes down to obtaining new skills, shouldn't it be our primary focus to actually enable our students to understand how they can actually obtain these skills, what they need to do to change their way in their perception of skills? You know, because I could do a workshop on communication, right? I could do a workshop on communication and give you 2 moments where you can exercise this, or a presentation even. I can give you 2 moments in my course where you can exercise your presentation skills. At the end of my course, have you mastered the presentation skills? No, you've done 2 times an exercise on how to present something. So if I want you to be the best presenter ever, I should repeatedly offer you an opportunity to actually, you know, practice this skill. But we don't have time for this in education, because education is still 4 years. We want you to have your degree and then move on, right? So the way I see it, and I'm actually currently working on a project with 2 of my colleagues at EUR on this, is we're trying to create a framework where we allow students to naturally obtain certain skills, self-regulated learning skills, personal skills, you know, so they can actually train themselves on obtaining skills. It sounds so weird when I say it. I probably have it written out better on paper, But I don't necessarily think we're going to help students by forcing them to do courses on skills such as, the 21st century skills lists. I think we're better off helping our students understanding, how to obtain a skill, how to train yourself in obtaining a certain skill, and then how to make it work for you. So I think I'm going to stick to that for now.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is like in the chat, they say you've been dropping knowledge. I think like every second, every second, a new super great insight. Did you have another question, Hanneke?
No, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and I think instilling a certain mindset in students that they are open to learn new things and not being afraid of working with other people or taking on a new task that they don't know. I think that's way more important for the future students that we will be teaching than just giving them a certain piece of knowledge. So I definitely see what you mean there.
Yeah.
Nas, were there any other questions in the chat or?
No, actually, I think this is about all the time that we have today with you, Farshida. Unfortunately, I'm sure that we could continue talking for ages. Thanks so much for all the insights, like I said, that you've been sharing with us and your expertise. It is clear that you have like tremendous experience with these things. I think many of our viewers will be able to take home valuable insights and hopefully implement them in their own projects. I hope so. Tell us, where can people find out more about you or what you guys are doing at ErasmusX?
Yeah, well, thank you guys for offering this opportunity to me. And thank you for your brilliant questions, Hanneke and Nastasia, but also the people at home. I feel somewhat grilled right now. So I hope I could convey the message in a way that it resonates and you can relate to it. You can actually find us on our website. It's www.erasmusx.io. I'm going to make a small disclaimer here because it's still under construction, and like anything we do, we're building live and looking at real-time stuff that's happening on our website. So whenever something pops up, we're like, okay, let's do this. On the website, there's also a chat bot. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can actually fill out your information through the chat bot. And if there's anyone at home who's curious about, what is this gathered town thing that they were talking about, or how do I get involved with ErasmusX projects, or I actually want to visit the Minecraft campus, you can reach out to me. Just send me an email. I think Nastasia can put the email address in the link. And you're more than welcome to jump in our office anytime you want to, or to send out an email to us and ask us like, hey, how would you guys look at this? We're not a very formal group of people, as you might have noticed by the way I am speaking right now. So please feel welcomed and feel free to engage with us whenever it suits you.
Thanks so much, Farshida. I think on behalf of all of us, we look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Yeah,
thank you guys.
I also think that everything that we learned today was mostly in the teaching and education realm, but I think many of the insights that we got are also very interesting for more research-related projects or in whatever context you can think of. So I'm also really looking forward to make a summary of what we discussed today and also upload that on the GEMLab website. Because if you want to know more about GEMLab and the work that we do, you can check out our website on www.gemlab.com or follow us on our socials. And you can find all this information in the description on YouTube, as well also on screen after we stop this session.
Yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, perhaps again or perhaps for the first time to this GEM session. Please remember to fill in the short feedback survey. If you have any tips for us or ideas about future sessions, we'll be posting the link in the chat window soon. We will be back next quarter with a summer GEM session, so make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media for updates. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great weekend and thanks.